Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. July the 16th marks the death of Hilaire Belloc, the French writer and political activist. He died in 1953. Along with G.K. Chesterton, he was hugely influential in the growth of the Catholic presence in the wider culture. Joseph Pearce joins us to talk more about Hilaire Belloc. Joseph is no stranger to this program, visiting professor of literature at Ave Maria University, visiting fellow of Thomas More College of Liberal Arts, and he's the author of more than 30 books, editor of the St. Austin Review. He is also a senior contributor at the Imaginative Conservative. And most of all, you can visit his personal website to find all of his writings at jpearce.co. Joseph, great to speak with you again. How are you?
I'm fine. It's always good to be with you.
Joseph, every time I read your bio, I know I make this little quip, but you never sleep, do you?
How about once or twice a year?
So I think a good place for us to begin, Joseph, is people like you and I love Belloc. We read his writings, and in fact, we learn so much from him that we reshape the way we think about, say, the European and Christian paradigm from his writings. Why is he not more well known?
Well, that's a great question. I think he's often sort of in the shadow and sometimes even eclipsed by his great friend G.K. Chesterton. Thanks be to God, in the last 20 or 30 years, there's been a great Chesterton revival, with many of Chesterton's books coming back into print and being far more widely read by a new generation. That's all to be joyful about. We can rejoice certainly in the Chesterton revival. But I think we're beginning to see, perhaps, or at least I'm hoping we're beginning to see a Belloc revival also, because Belloc and Chesterton were great comrades in arms, fighting and defending the Catholic faith in the first third of the 20th century, and they really should be standing side by side, and Belloc needs to come out of Chesterton's shadow.
I couldn't agree more, and so maybe one suggestion would be that someone ought to form a Hilaire Belloc Society, and then just do that in healthy competition with the Chesterton Society.
I would love that, and should someone start it, I'd be one of the first people to join it.
So let's begin with an historical background. When Chesterton and Belloc were writing, they were, I can rightly say this, they were cultural prophets. They were men who understood the history and were seeing what was happening around them, and so they could rightly predict into the future, accurately no less, what was going to happen in Christianity in the West.
Yes, Marcus, that's very perceptive. The point is, what people don't realize is that history is a map of the past, which allows us to understand the present, but also you can draw lines on that historical map that create a trajectory which allow you to see into the future. The saying is, which I'm sure that many of your listeners have heard, is that those who don't learn the lessons of the past are doomed to repeat them. Well, what history allows us to do is to learn the lessons of the past so that we don't have to repeat them.
Can you share with us the kind of mistakes that they were seeing, particularly in terms of the English Reformation and the kind of philosophy that was being put forth by the British Empire across the world?
Yeah, exactly. So basically what Hilaire Belloc set out to do was to correct what he called the ignorant wickedness of tomfool Protestant history. So he, as usual, Belloc didn't beat about the bush in naming what was wrong. But basically, the official history of England whitewashed out the Catholic presence in history. It accentuated so-called Catholic crimes and completely covered up the many executions of Catholic martyrs for a period of 150 years. From the 1530s to the 1680s, Catholics were routinely executed, tortured, and executed for no other crime than either being a Catholic, being Catholic priest, or hiding a Catholic priest. And then after that 150 years of executions, there was a further 150 years of persecution. So it wasn't until Catholic emancipation in 1829, 300 years after Henry VIII ruptured England away from the faith. That 300 years, so what Belloc sought to do in his work was to uncover the real truth about English history and not the fabricated, sanitized, anti-Catholic history which most English people have grown up with, and that's why many English people are anti-Catholic or have anti-Catholic prejudices, because they've been sold a lie.
Can you tell us some of the fruits that they were seeing in that 1829? So the new spirit, you highlight these things: new spirit of Romanticism, neo-medievalism, Gothic revival, the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood of Art, all of these things. Share with us what was going on.
Yeah, so basically, in the early part of the 19th century, following Catholic emancipation, 1829, and certainly accelerating with the crucial conversion of St. John Henry Newman in 1845, we had a huge Catholic revival happening in England, with Catholic churches springing up across the country, Catholic schools springing up across the country, the number of Catholics in the country, either converts or there are many immigrants from Ireland following the potato famine, that basically the number of Catholics in England surged during the reign of Queen Victoria. And so when Chesterton Belloc started writing from 1900 or so onwards, they were really the second phase of this Catholic revival following that earlier phase in the Victorian period. They took up the mantle, if you like, and carried the torch forward, to mix my metaphors. So that period from about 1900 till Chesterton's death in 1936 is what I sometimes call the Chester-Belloc period, the period where Chesterton and Belloc were the two giants, if you like, that were championing the faith in the English-speaking world.
What made them so effective? There were other contemporary authors at the time, many of whom were opponents to them. What made these two so prolific and effective?
Yeah, well, that's a great question too. First of all, I think the charisma of the two men themselves, they were giants in the true sense of the word. And also the dynamism of their relationship and friendship. People saw them as comrades in arms in a common struggle, but also the quality of their writing. They were men of letters. They were great essayists and great novelists and great writers of nonfiction, including works of history, which we've been talking about, great poets. And so basically their literary and historical and philosophical and theological presence was something which really captured the imagination of Catholics and often caused consternation and anger amongst the enemies of the church.
It's very clear that these were Renaissance men, and they made efforts to be so. They were not just bookish men who sat in their ivory towers and commented on things they were not in touch with.
No, very much so. These two men actually made most of their living as journalists, writing essays for the daily newspapers and the weekly newspapers. And I would say, by the way, when I say journalism, not like the gutter press we used to today. These were men of letters and the art of the essay. And if you want, some of the finest essayists in the English language are Chesterton and Belloc, and they use that gift of the essay to comment upon the world in which they live from a topical perspective, but always in the light of the permanent things, and particularly, of course, the permanent person who is Jesus Christ.
Like you rightly mentioned, that gift of the essayist, the rhetorical flourish with which these men communicate their ideas, and even in their poetry. I mean, Joseph, no one writes like that anymore, except maybe Joseph Pearce, of course.
Well, thank you. You've made my day, Marcus. No, it is true that there's something of a literary golden age, from about the mid-19th century to the mid-20th century, which constituted the Catholic cultural revival, and specifically the Catholic literary revival, and that's why these people are still read. Because what they wrote was beautiful. If what they wrote was really topical and might have raised an eyebrow in their own time because of what was going on in the news, nobody would be interested in reading them today. But the point is, they looked at the world from the perspective of Catholic truth. And that Catholic truth, of course, doesn't change. It remains true. And that's why their words remain relevant, and that's why they're still being read.
Joseph, thank you very much for your time. Always a joy to reconnect with you. And thank you for this piece.
My pleasure. Thank you, Marcus. God bless you.
My guest has been Joseph Pearce. He's, again, no stranger to this program. I always enjoy when we get to reconnect. Joseph wears many hats, but one of the things I want to ask you to pay attention to is jpearce.co. Do log on to his website and become a subscriber and follow all of his writings. We've been talking about Hilaire Belloc. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.